Episode Heresy has officially been out for over a week, and now that we've had some time to play with them, the 3 new aspects for the light subclasses have slowly been making their way into people's builds. And I myself have played extensively with all 3 of them, so today I'm going to be breaking down the ins and outs of each of them, showing you exactly how they work, how to best incorporate them into your builds, and some spicy yet important interactions to be aware of. So without further ado, let's begin with Hunters and On the Prowl. On the Prowl is a brand new Void aspect that offers the following functionality. Entering invisibility marks a nearby combatant as a priority target for you and your team. Defeating priority targets creates a weakening cloud of smoke that makes you and allies invisible when you pass through it. When priority targets are defeated, you and nearby allies gain increased weapon reload speed and stability for a short duration and are granted grenade, melee, and class ability energy. So let's break it down. As you saw, entering invisibility causes a nearby target to become marked. And first of all, once the target is marked, it cannot be unmarked, even if you exit invisibility. The target will remain marked until you defeat it, visible by a pink glow emanating from the enemy itself or a marker through walls if you cannot physically see it. Second, the weakening cloud that spawns after defeating the target will remain on the ground for around 5 or 6 seconds, so don't leave it too long to pass through it, and when you do, you're then given 7 seconds of invisibility. Third, defeating the target regardless of whether you step into the cloud or not will grant you 7 seconds of the successful hunt buff, which is the one responsible for providing you with that extra reload speed and stability. For those that remember, this is very much like the old subclass 2.0 perk Heart of the Pack, which was a favourite of mine, so it's nice to see it return in some capacity. Lastly, the amount of ability energy gained for defeating the target is the same across all 3 abilities, and it seems to be anywhere between 2 and 5% of each one, so not too bad, but nothing amazing either. Okay then, now let's talk synergy, and since this aspect hinges heavily on becoming invisible, let's weigh up our options. The Vanishing Step aspect will make you invisible when dodging, which is a super easy way of starting the chain. The same can be said for Trapper's Ambush, letting you perform a quick fall that also makes you invisible, but in my opinion, the best aspect to pair with On the Prowl by far is Stylish Executioner, because now every time you defeat a Void debuffed enemy, you'll become invisible, and it's pretty easy to start the chain with this by throwing your smoke bomb to weaken an enemy, and then the rest will feed itself, as long as you're getting kills, of course. Pair these 2 aspects together with Gerfalcon's Hauberk and a suitable Void weapon like Hardlight, and you're off to the races. The volatile rounds from Gerfalcon will keep your Stylish Executioner sustained, which also keeps your On the Prowl sustained. While not as optimal, this does also open up some room for Graviton Forfeit and Trapper's Ambush to be paired together alongside On the Prowl, because being invisible accelerates your melee regeneration rate to 400% at base, or 800% when near 2 or more enemies, so you could definitely go about it this way too. However, I do think Gerfalcon and Stylish Executioner is the most optimal way to go. For team play like Nightfall's, Omnioculus is also a great pairing alongside Trapper's Ambush, again because of the melee energy returned when making your teammates invisible for a more safe and at a distance playstyle. Furthermore, Gwizin Vest is now also a pretty decent pick for Void Hunter because it recently got buffed to gain an added behavior where exiting invisibility leaves behind a weakening cloud of smoke, just like On the Prowl. The catch is that the cloud from Gwizin won't also make you invisible, but the big draw is that you're now creating twice as many clouds when you exit your invis. And if you still miss Gerfalcon purely because of the volatile rounds, then just use a weapon with destabilizing rounds instead. This perk also got buffed where it now provides 5 seconds of volatile rounds after every kill, which is pretty much close enough to Gerfalcon's. So dare I say, is Gerfalcon's going out of fashion? We'll have to wait and see. As far as special interactions are concerned, Lorentz Driver has quite a cool one where sometimes the bounty target and the On the Prowl target overlap, but that isn't the best part. The best part is that specifically when you have Lagrangian Sight active, defeating the On the Prowl target, even if it isn't the bounty, will also drop a telemetry data, meaning you can now basically farm them twice as fast and have constant upkeep on the perk and create plentiful amounts of ammo for the gun. And the buff, by the way, increases Lorentz Driver's damage by 50% and no longer requires you to hit headshots to trigger the EM anomaly explosion. So these 2 pair together very nicely. Finally, the smoke cloud generated is technically coded as melee damage, meaning it will trigger perks like Grave Robber and reload your weapon if it hits any nearby enemies, and also things like Swashbuckler, Pugilist, etc. Warlocks get Ionic Sentry, an arc aspect that functions like so. Defeat targets with kinetic or arc weapons or arc abilities to charge up an arc turret that periodically chains lightning between nearby targets, granting a stack of bolt charge with each hit that binds to your grenade slot. It's good to think of this aspect as a brother to Gunpowder Gamble, since they both are charged in similar ways, and you can see your progress indicated by the checkbox meter on the left of your screen. So how quickly can you charge this thing? Well, arc abilities count for 2 points on the meter, meaning you'd only need 3 ability kills to fully charge it, which is very easily doable with a pulse grenade, for example, and kinetic and and arc weapon kills each give 1 point towards the meter. As it was stated on the description, the Sentry causes a small blinding burst on initial impact, which is handy for crowd control, but it also lets it stun unstoppable champions as a result. After that, each enemy hit with the lightning coming from the Sentry will grant you a single stack of Bolt Charge. Bolt Charge is the brand new arc verb added this season, and I'm sure you're already familiar with how it works, but if not, here's a quick summary. Various aspects, fragments, and abilities grant you stacks of Bolt Charge, and when holding it, dealing weapon damage will increment your stacks to a maximum of 10. At 10 stacks of Bolt Charge, your next instance of ability damage will cause a lightning bolt to appear above the affected target and strike them for a heavy amount of damage, much like an ignition would on the solar subclasses. Lastly, each stack of Bolt Charge you gather will also grant a small amount of melee energy. Back to Ionic Sentry now. Given that it technically counts as ability damage, it too is capable of triggering the lightning strikes from Bolt Charge. And finally, the Sentry itself lasts for 15 seconds on the ground, which is a pretty long time given that the cooldown after deploying it is only 6 seconds, meaning you can very easily get another one while the first is still active. Alright, now let's talk synergies. And the first thought on my mind when this aspect was released was, given that it occupies your grenade slot, does it technically count as a grenade for grenade-based things like Firepower, Spark of Shock, or Verity's Brow? And unfortunately, the answer is no. The damage from Ionic Sentry is simply generic arc damage that doesn't trigger any grenade-related effects. Spark of Shock won't make it apply Jolt, Firepower won't allow it to spawn orbs on kills, and Death Throws from Verity's Brow won't make it deal more damage. However, throwing it while holding Death Throws will provide Fuel the Flame for your allies, so there's that at least. I have heard that apparently it's bugged and is supposed to be acting like a grenade though, so if true, that's great news for when it's eventually fixed. Imagine having triple Firepower, plonking down your Sentry, and then watching tons and tons of orbs be created, which could be insanely strong. Well, we can hope anyway. Spark of Frequency, which is meant to increase the amount of Bolt Charge you get from all sources, also doesn't work with the damage ticks from Ionic Sentry. However, despite all these non-synergistic misfortunes, it does make up for it with how often you're able to proc it and the sheer utility it offers. When combined with the right build, this thing really does fit perfectly, like with how I made it fit into a Geomag stabilizer setup alongside Delicate Tomb in a build I posted last week, so feel free to check that out if you want to see more. Besides Geomags, there are currently no other exotic armors in the game which synergize with Bolt Charge, so your options are very limited, meaning we have to turn our gaze to subclass synergies instead. Like for example, the Arc Soul aspect counts as ability damage, therefore any kill it gets will provide 2 points for the meter. Lastly, deploying the Sentry will trigger the reload portion of the Demolitionist weapon perk, as well as convert Osmosis weapons to arc damage if they're being held at the time of deploy. Finally, we move on to Titans, who are given Storm's Keep, yet another arc aspect. Storm's Keep reads as follows: cast your class ability to grant a moderate amount of Bolt Charge stacks to you and nearby allies. While behind your barricade, you and allies gain stacks of Bolt Charge over time, and your weapons can discharge max stacks of Bolt Charge. So, first things first, how much Bolt Charge are we talking? Well, if you're using Thruster, you get 6 stacks immediately after using it, and with Towering or Rally Barricade, you instead get 4. But of course, the benefit with those is that it also immediately begins generating more the longer you stand behind them. That's about as simple as it gets really. Stand behind barricade, generate Bolt Charge, shoot weapon to detonate. But despite it being the simplest aspect out of all 3, this by no means makes it the weakest. In fact, it's by far the strongest for multiple reasons, all of which I'll happily go into, starting with the fact that it allows your weapons to detonate the charge. You might not initially realize it, but this small change to Bolt Charge's base behavior is absolutely massive. Now, for simply standing behind a barricade, you no longer have to rely on a limited number of abilities to trigger the lightning strikes, but instead can detonate as many as you'd like with your infinite ammo weapons. Furthermore, it's recently been discovered that having multiple barricades overlapping each other actually makes the generated Bolt Charge accumulate faster, meaning you can effectively pump out lightning strikes at the rate of about 1 every 1 to 2 seconds, and especially if you consider that we currently have an artifact perk Flashover that increases your lightning bolt damage by 2.5 times, adding in this special barricade to any dungeon or raid damage composition will substantially raise both your DPS and total damage. Furthermore, the best part about Bolt Charge is that unlike Ignitions and Shatters, the lightning bolts can be stacked across multiple members of the fireteam and have them all register their damage on the boss. If you want to see a good example of how cracked Bolt Charge truly is when combined with this aspect, fellow creator Sutek posted a solo one phase of the brand new Zoetic Lockset dungeon boss, which is absolutely absurd. I'll have that linked in the description if you're curious. As far as synergy is concerned, any barricade adjacent exotic only adds to the craziness. You can go Titan's Ramparts and be able to shoot through your barricade while also being protected. Heart of Inmost Light will let you spam it more often, but by far the best exotic to pair with it is hazardous propulsion, because now getting kills behind your barricade will also allow your next one to fire several Exodus rockets at the next group of ads, which only adds to its lethality. In fact, using hazardous propulsion as a damage tool is also a viable strategy. It's actually part of the reason why Sutek from earlier was able to secure that lock set 1 phase. I'm planning to do a video going into a deeper dive on just Storm's Keep later in the week, because I truly think it's going to revolutionize how we deal damage to bosses going forward, so definitely stay tuned for that. Build wise, if you're looking to have as much uptime as possible, you do have a few ways you can go. Knockout, while not having any synergy, is always going to be a good choice since arc subclasses in general are quite bad when it comes to healing, so the extra regen from melee kills is very much welcome. But if you're willing to forfeit that, you could instead go for Touch of Thunder and use pulse grenades, because with this aspect, your pulse grenades now periodically spawn ionic traces when dealing damage to a target, which when collected grant class ability energy for your next Storm's Keep activation. Juggernaut has no synergy and is basically a worthless aspect, at least in PvE, so choose either Touch of Thunder or Knockout, and for me personally, I always prefer Knockout for the heals. Another quirk I've noticed is that area denial frame grenade launcher damage seems to rapidly refill your class ability energy, which is almost certainly a bug stemming from the volatile marksman artifact perk, but as you can see, it definitely works and lets me spam my barricade over and over, so definitely keep this in mind at least until they decide to fix it. So that about does it for today, so I hope you enjoyed the breakdown of each of the new aspects and learned something new along the way. In any case, I'll see you in the next one. If you made it this far, thank you so much. Your support means the world. And if you're really into the content I create, consider becoming a member of the channel, which not only lets you support me in the best way possible, it also nets you a whole host of awesome perks along with it. A massive shout out to these members up on screen, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now, dear viewer.